Can I paint a complete landscape type scene in only 2 hours? Well, hello there, I'm Detroit. For today's video, I wanted to do something fun. As I said, probably in the title, or maybe the thumbnail or the hook to this video, which I will decide later on, I put a time constraint on this painting you're about to see. I don't want to say that this painting was my best, but I think with the time constraint I added to it, it turned out not too bad. I actually really like the end product, but it would have been better with more hours, of course. But that's the challenge. You will need to tell me if it ended up good or not. I wanted to limit the time I could spend on it to 2 hours. I asked myself how much I could do in 2 hours for a landscape, and this is how this experience was born. I guess it's not really a landscape, is it? I tend to call outdoor scene with no characters landscapes. Actually, this is just a jungle temple. You should be able to see it eventually. The reason it's a jungle temple is because a while ago, recently, I got comments telling me I didn't draw enough greenery or vegetation, so this was the opportunity for a forest type situation. So 2 hours. That's an interesting time constraint, isn't it? It's a good length, but it's a bit frustrating as well. The sketching phase I usually go through for every digital art I do lasts about 30 minutes. In the sketching phase I include thumbnailing, construction lines, and all the proper sketch that's after it. If you don't know, thumbnailing is when you zoom out a lot and place the main shapes. It helps working on composition, pose, meaning maybe, without going into the details. You can make many iterations in just a couple minutes to see where you want to go with the piece. I don't do it often for videos though. Most of the time I do that off screen, or I don't do it at all. Since I get most of my ideas long before I get around to draw them, I let the idea simmer for a while and refine itself. And when I do get to drawing the idea, I already have a picture in mind. Anyway, as I was saying, the sketching phase is usually half an hour, and that's a good time for it. But in 30 minutes, you can't do much more than that. Well, I can't. I shouldn't generalize it for every artist. However, after the sketching, depending on the style, the time it takes to make a full artwork changes a lot. Today there is no inking, which takes 30 minutes away from the process, give or take a few. But then you have to cram in blocking shapes, finding colors, making the composition nice, and then work on the lights and shadows. For that, 2 hours can be a very short time. It might be the reason why there's no characters included in today's painting. Just so you know, most of the digital art I make takes between 3 and 7 hours. Longer projects I don't generally have the time for, but in any case it's mostly over 2 hours. While I think I did a good job with this illustration you're watching, I feel like it's the sort of picture where I could have spent another 5 hours into it and refine it and make it way better. 2 hours was just enough to make a finished drawing. Not the best version it could be, but finished nonetheless. It is definitely an interesting exercise, and I think it's even more interesting to have a time constraint for painting. For the entire painting, I'm using only one brush, with pressure size and opacity. I am also not using a lot of digital tools, like I'm avoiding erasers, lasso tools, clipping masks and so on. That is the usual way I paint, because that's what the style is, right? On a physical canvas, you can't lasso a section or erase the paint cleanly. But with only 2 hours, I don't think I could have done it without layer styles and the lasso tool mainly. So in a way, this exercise is a good way to understand the process of painting without the tools. By being forced to use the tools, it makes it easier to understand what it means to not have them, if it makes sense. I don't know where I'm going with that. Another way to say it, I guess, is that by putting a time constraint on the project, I am forced to take shortcuts, to mess up my order of the painting process, my workflow to fit the time constraint. I don't think I've ever added the main highlight and the saturated color transition next to that highlight so early in the painting. But here, I had to, because I needed to think of everything in relation to it, because I didn't have the time to normally build the canvas like I usually do. It messed up pretty much everything, which made me discover more things about painting. I also had to find workarounds and simplifications for stuff. The best example I have is reshaping the wall and the bushes in the center of the background. When I decided to completely change it, I had to very quickly redraw everything in that location, and more importantly shade accordingly and with the right colors. Another example of both using a different workflow and using digital tools is near the end of the painting, when I want to shift the color scheme a bit, make the overall picture more blue and cold in comparison to the very warm light falling onto the red stone. I used the simple layer style with a mask to block in everything but the warm parts, and then tinged all of it with shades of blue. Normally, I would have thought of that much earlier in the process, when I was finding the colors I was going to use. In any case, I don't regret any of my choices. Either they were good choices and it worked out okay, or they were bad and I learned from it. At the same time, I don't really care, since it's not my favorite painting, both in idea and in execution. If it had been, I would have continued it long after the 2 hours mark, but I'm fine with leaving it as it is. Maybe in 2 years I will go back to it and start it over. I do like it a lot, just not as much as other paintings. I wanted to experiment with time constraints for a video for a while now. I chose a 2-hour constraint because I knew I wanted to paint, and you can get nothing done in 30 minutes in this style. Also because it doesn't contain inking. Inking can take 15 minutes or an hour and a half. It's still hard to gauge for me sometimes. Anyway, 2 hours was a good first choice. Maybe eventually I will make the sort of video with a 3 minutes, 30 minutes, 3 hours and however long it takes or something like that. Would you be interested in seeing that? Maybe I can do it while drawing one of your prompt ideas. Leave them in the comments. I do like to pick from your imagination sometimes. On another note, I also wanted to know if you guys would be interested in full drawing footage, real time. Obviously, this video is less than 10 minutes, even though I took the full 2 hours to draw. But would you actually be interested in being able to see the full 2 hours? Because I can upload that for a future drawing instead of making a time-lapse. I am physically unable to talk and record audio for hours on hand while I draw though, so it would be a silent video. When I draw, I don't want my microphone to bother me, and I'm not used to speaking my thoughts out loud when I paint or draw. Also, I often make artworks over different days, or I might pause one drawing to start another, then go back to the previous one, etc. I also do listen to copyrighted songs all the time, which I can't record obviously, or I watch videos on YouTube, or stand-up comedy, or series while I draw, and I don't like to wear headphones, so yeah, it would be silent. The video would be hours long. But would you be interested in that? Tell me all of that in the comments. Tell me also if you like this video and this drawing. Subscribe for 2 drawing videos per week and check all of my past and future art on Instagram at d3_sd. I'm Detroit and I'll be here until the end of time. Bye!